Oh, you okay? Hello?
Can you hear us, Ms. Milton?
I hear you, Dr. Bailey. Can I speak to you, Dr. Moore?
Can you hear me?
I can. Miss Abraham?
Yes.
Okay, I'm good.
Ms. Lewis, can you hear us?
I can.
Yes, I can.
Chair calls the special call meeting of the Greenwood Leflore Consolidated School District to order. Please let the record reflect that both Ms. Milton as well as Mrs. Lewis are joining us virtually. Let me bow our head for a moment of silent prayer. Amen. Chair will entertain a motion to approve the agenda as printed.
So moved. Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, please vote by name since we have two joining us virtually.
I, Dr. Colonia Moore. I'm Abraham.
Jackie Lewis.
I, Rashawn Bailey.
I cannot hear.
Any nays? Ayes have it, the motion carried. Dr. Brown?
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
On the agenda first, Greenwood High School opening. I prepared an executive summary. I'm assuming that's the reopening. Approval for Greenwood High School students to resume in-person learning. Greenwood High School was recently switched to virtual instruction. This was done to ensure adequate COVID-19 contact tracing and to review the availability of staff on campus. When schools are switched to virtual instruction, it may be due to staff members having to quarantine. This may place a hardship on the remaining staff's ability to effectively supervise the campus. At this time, it has been determined that Greenwood High School will have additional staff assigned to the school by the district in order for those students who were not direct contacts with any of the individuals who reported testing positive for COVID-19 this week to return to in-person learning on Friday, September 16th of 2021. These students were not required to quarantine because they did not come in contact with any individual who tested positive for COVID-19. Additionally, Greenwood High School's campus has been properly sanitized, and those who did not receive written notification to quarantine may return to school on Friday, September 16th of 2021. And board members, I would like to say this is only for the students who didn't test positive. We do have additional staff that we are assigning to Greenwood High School if the board approves.
Questions, board members?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so Dr. Brown, can you kind of take us back to when Greenwood High, the entire school, went on quarantine?
Yes, ma'am. So when the school went on quarantine, we did receive a call from the principal at that time reporting that he had received phone calls that students and one staff member had tested positive. One was over the weekend, and he received that second call during the week. Had to give him time to begin the contact tracing, and that's what he did, but as he was contact tracing, he did notify us that some staff did come in contact with some of those students and that staff member who did test positive. So out of an abundance of caution, instead of continuing to operate the schools and not having the contact tracing done, we did opt for the virtual learning. Now that he has completed the contact tracing, those students and staff members who were not in direct contact, instead of going into the remainder of this week and next week virtually, would like to come back in person. So it only affects those who were not in direct contact.
Okay, so what date did they actually go out on quarantine?
I think it was it, I'm getting the floor mixed up. Tuesday? It was Tuesday.
Tuesday, what date was it?
The 14th.
Okay, and they were slated to stay out until when?
September 27, I believe, which is a Monday. And that would have done it was given the 10-day quarantine. It would have been sufficient, it is sufficient for those who did come in direct contact.
So now we're able to cut it short and bring them back?
Only for those who did not come in direct contact. The ones who have to quarantine still have to quarantine. It's the students who did not come in direct contact and did not receive the written notification. They would have continued to be at school if we had the staff there, but we didn't have the staff at the time. We do have additional staff that we can send to Greenwood High School, as we had done for, I believe, the Leflore County High School at once.
Okay, so my final question, Dr. Brown, so they were gonna be out because we did not have the staff, not necessarily because they were quarantined?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, board members?
Yes, Dr. I do have one, Dr.
Yes, ma'am.
Are we able to test our students? Because of them we enter into an agreement. Can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Are we able to now test students to assist parents in this effort?
Yes, ma'am. And we did enter into an agreement with Maverick Health. We do have some, and we did have some COVID-19 tests that our nurses administer. Mr. Johnson actually, I won't say walked Maverick around, but introduced Maverick yesterday and took them around. So, Mr. Johnson.
Yes, we will be hopefully starting in some locations on next week. The final step in the process for Maverick to start coming in, we have reviewed every site. It's the consent forms that was sent home to parents. We have to make sure we have every consent form on file, and then the school will create a list of those students that have received consent, and they would test based on those students that have received consent back from their parents. And so they are looking at possibly having 3 to 4 teams to test, depending on the number of participants that we have willing, because this will be a process where they are tested every week. And one of the things I did indicate to high school principals was that athletics and extracurricular activity, we are requesting for those students to give consent so they'll be able to be tested weekly.
Okay, I was unsure if we had started that effort yet. I do know when our schools have to close or send home teachers, that I don't know how much of a hardship that will place on our parents. So I'm wondering, had that effort begun yet?
And I would like to say, for those parents that are listening, principals have sent home those consent forms, and if they desire, if they would return those consent forms as soon as possible, that way it gives Maverick an idea of what they need to bring to start the testing process.
Dr. Bailey? Okay, so the testing, the company that we're utilizing, or the agency rather, are they able to assist our teachers as well?
Yes, as long as our staff complete a consent form, that was one of the things he mentioned. As long as they have a consent form on everyone, whether it's staff or students, they will be able to test.
Any other questions, board members?
Yes.
Go ahead, Ms. Lewis.
Yeah, is company, fully on?
Yes, Attorney Pulley is on the phone.
Okay.
Dr. Bailey?
I believe believe Ms. Milton had a question, Ms. Lewis.
Okay.
No, I was just making sure that he was on the telephone.
Okay. Ms. Flowers, please let the record reflect the Attorney Pulley is on the line, on the telephone. Let the record reflect that Attorney Pulley. Ms. Lewis, go ahead.
Okay, Dr. Brown, so, with the students returning back to school tomorrow, will there be a football game?
With the students returning to a school, if the football game is scheduled, yes. As long as the students are in person, then football games can occur.
Okay, thank you.
And if I may, just a comment, not necessarily a question. So we do recognize what perception this seems oddly enough that we're requesting on Thursday evening to allow students to return to school, considering a rivalry game has been scheduled for tomorrow. Just wanted to make that statement.
And yeah, I do understand that, but I'm preparing to make this request on Wednesday. And then Thursday, we have some other things to come up, Wednesday as well.
Dr. Bailey, should we ask Mr. Pulley to speak to this situation? Attorney Pulley, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Are there any,
You say speak to the situation, are you meaning the ability of the football team to play on Saturday?
No, just our actions that we're taking today. Just if you can reiterate any of the statutes or laws that affects this particular decision, if you feel it's important.
The board, in the previous special call meeting, stated that it would like to, any closures or openings of students, the board has to approve it. We do have an unofficial, and I would like to reiterate, unofficial and oral opinion from the AG's office. The board would approve all school closures, and with that, of course, that would be open as well. But that's the guidance on that. And if it's the board's consensus, then the board would then vote on the opening or the reopening of Greenwood High School on tomorrow.
any other question, board members? The superintendent recommends school board approval for the students at Greenwood High School who were not required to quarantine will be allowed to return to in-person learning on Friday, September the 16th, 2021.
Dr. Bailey, I have
Yes, ma'am.
I have an observation here.
Yes, ma'am.
That should be Friday, September 17th.
Thank you for the correction.
With that correction.
The superintendent recommends school board approval for the students at Greenwood High School who were not required to quarantine be allowed to return to in-person learning on Friday, September the 17th, 2021. Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
I, Kalanya Moore.
I, Samantha Milton.
Those voting nay,
I, Samantha Milton.
those voting nay have the same right.
Nay, Jackie Lewis.
Nay, Rashawn Bailey. Motion carries. Dr. Brown.
Next on the agenda, you have incentives.
Ms. Milton.
Or would you like to speak to that?
Yes, colleagues, I did want for us to speak briefly or dialogue briefly about the incentive information that was provided to us by Attorney Pulley via the Mississippi Department of Education, incentivizing those youth that are enrolled in our school district if they'd like to, or if their parents give them consent to, for vaccination. I thought, it was, that particular information that was sent to us, I felt like it was, information enough for us to discuss that.
And Attorney Pulley, could you speak to that briefly, if you don't mind?
Yes. I believe that they were September 9th or 10th, where NDE, provided more guidance, regarding the use of ESSER funds. And more specifically, they have, the guidance that is listed in public, information that is listed on NDE's website, that, it is now allowing, it's furthering the use of ESSER funds to be used to provide incentives to employees and incentives to students, incentives to parents. It also goes further to say in the members of households, provides them with incentives to be vaccinated. And those incentives, they could be, the incentives could include cash, it could include, I believe it mentioned tablets, or any other reasonable prize that we could, that the students could enter into some sort of raffle and win a prize, such as a new tablet, a reasonable cash award, scholarship money, or new supplies and books to be vaccinated. And that can be used, the ESSER funds can now be used to incentivize employees, students, parents, and members of the household to be vaccinated in an effort to keep schools open and not closed.
I asked if we could place this on the agenda for today because, athletics is important, but academics is first, okay? And we want to do all that we can to assist parents with keeping children in school. We've got to place, because of COVID-19, there's been so many gaps in data, gaps in attendance, and so we want to just make sure that those gaps are filled as much as possible from students, from teachers, parents, all members of those households, where we can keep the academic focus atop our list here in the Greenwood Leflore School District. So I thought that was just important, board members, for us to put that out there and to make sure, just provide some assistance, always assistance and support for parents and families in our county.
Dr. Bailey?
Any other discussion?
Dr. Bailey?
Yes, ma'am.
I have a comment. I totally agree with Dr. Moore, academics being first, then athletics, but more importantly, safe athletics. Thank you.
Any other discussion?
No discussion.
Dr. Brown?
Ratify school closures.
I would like to make a motion to ratify the superintendent's decision to close Leflore County Elementary School, Leflore County High School, and Greenwood High School to comply with our policy ALC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Questions, is that right? It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
I'm back on Abraham.
Aye.
Say your name, please.
I'm Jackie Lewis.
Ms. Milton?
Aye, Samantha Milton.
I, Kalanya Moore.
Nay, Rashawn Bailey. Ayes have it. The motion carried. While we're talking about school closure, if I may we request an update on the closure or the exterminator coming out to Leflore County High and Elementary School?
Leflore County.
Could you repeat that again, Dr. Bailey?
Asking for an update on the exterminators coming out to Leflore County High School and Elementary School.
Oh, okay.
Leflore County High School and elementary schools were closed on Tuesday and Wednesday after a parent had concern about a student being bitten. Since then, we found that believed that the student was bitten by a flea. Exterminators did come out. They did spray, and they have safely removed some animals from underneath the building. I did suggest that Leflore County's campuses be closed today just to ensure more safety and students return to school on tomorrow on those campuses. However, the schools were open to students and staff. We did receive a concern from a parent this morning, as well as a teacher this morning regarding the issue. Mr. Johnson went over to walk the building. We have chiefs over at Leflore County High School. At this time, the buildings are safe, but the exterminator communicated yesterday, along with Mr. Gary, that the inside of the buildings were safe. It was the outside of the buildings that were questionable, and that was the reason for requesting that the schools be closed today, just to err on the side of caution, just one more day. But I would like for Mr. Johnson to talk about the observations, the things that he observed today.
And just to mention that the exterminators, when they came out, they did indicate that this is a process based on the level of infestation that was on the campus. As Dr. Brown stated, they was out on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. They did the insides as well as the outside. They continued on the outside today. From my observation when I was out there and from speaking to the chief that was out there, there was limited activity as it relates to fleas, but as the exterminator made us mindful of, as eggs are hatched, they can't be killed, and so as those eggs are hatched, you may have more. That's why they have to continue. This would be probably a 2 to 3 week process to actually continue the process of eliminating that infestation from the outside, the grass area.
And colleagues, if I may, I truly want to implore you all, or us as a board, to certainly reconsider the policy that we implemented on Tuesday, because this is just another example of how the intention, I would assume, of the policy was to resolve potential problems, but the policy itself could cause more harm than good. As Dr. Brown indicated, I too received phone calls from parents regarding their concern about a lack of safety at the floor, and of course the policy does not allow Dr. Brown to close that school for safety purposes. And as Mr. Johnson indicated, the exterminators, who are the experts in this matter, have advised that this is a step-by-step process, not something that occurs overnight. And I'm certain as a parent, and having relatives in the school district, we would not want our children in those schools if they're not safe. So again, I want to implore the board to reconsider the policy or find some method in which we can better address the needs when they arise to close schools for safety purposes.
Dr. Bailey?
Yes, ma'am.
Your point was well noted. However, we cannot, and I understand that the safety of the students is first, but we do have to follow policy. We don't want to defer to our policies at any time, and if we have overlooked any, we have done that without knowledge. But I just want to reiterate the importance of this board staying within policy and statute and any other rule that governs our organization. And then number two, I think it will be great if we can start being a little bit more proactive when our students are not in school, like scheduled, like maybe weekends or off holidays. We had a whole year and a half where no students were in the buildings. So why weren't we in the buildings making sure that all of this was taking place? Air conditioning, bats, fleas, and any other rodents or whatever. I just think, we have to start being a little bit proactive minded and to ensure that our children are being trained and educated. That's the whole purpose. Yes, safety first, I got it. No one knew COVID was going to hit us like it did. But we do have to make sure and ensure that as this entity meets, this dais meets on a regular basis, we have to make sure and ensure that our policies are being followed.
Very well said, Dr. Moore, and I couldn't agree more. However, I would like for Attorney Pulley, if he had briefly, could speak again to the statute, because again, I do believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Attorney General's opinion that was submitted was unofficial.
Board members, we requested an Attorney General's opinion related to school closure, specifically related to the authority to close, whether it's the superintendent or the board. We have not received any formal opinion from the Attorney General's office, meaning there is nothing in writing or official at all from the Attorney General's office. However, Attorney D.B. Gerard, who helped to write these opinions, did call me to state that unofficially she believes that there has to be some board action prior to school closing. And with that knowledge of the unofficial opinion, that is why I advise the board to consider the unofficial opinion in its policies. Now, the current policy, AFC, does include that statute. It does. The way that the policy is fairly written is it states that the superintendent hereby has the authority to close the school in the event of an emergency, as long as the superintendent notifies the board. Now, I believe that is the way that the board and superintendent has operated for the past 2.5 years. But as it relates to who should have the authority to close, the Attorney General's office could only give me what the law is, or what they believe the law is, and how they interpret that statute. They couldn't, of course, give me a practical answer as to, if there's an emergency at 9 o'clock at night, who you call it me. They could not give me any answer to that. They only could tell me that the schools could not be closed without board approval.
And my last question in regards to the school closure, again, from a phone call with the parent, is about a junior high football game that was supposed to take place today, that for whatever reason is not taking place.
So again, as I stated for Greenwood High School, that if the schools are open, that football games can take place. So Leflore County High School was in session today. Therefore, the football team can play today. As far as them not being able to play, I want to allow Mr. Gatewood to respond to that with the information that he has. Mr. Gatewood, do you mind?
Yesterday, at Leflore, we supposed to been playing, Leland Middle School, but I was informed this morning that that game was not take place, as well as Greenwood Middle School game. Greenwood Middle School game was canceled because of virtual. Leland game was canceled due to the fact that he said he couldn't get his players back up to play. So that's one reason why it was canceled. I was notified this morning about that at 8 o'clock.
Thank you for that information. Again, ironically, there are issues in the floor, but we can make decisions for another school to play a football game. But I digress. Chair will entertain a motion for consideration for executive session.
Dr. Bailey, I would like to have a comment.
Go ahead, Madam President.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree wholeheartedly with Dr. Moore. It's not an option that we must follow our policies, and especially as it is related to the Mississippi Code. And this board promotes safe and orderly schools, so we want to work hand in hand with our superintendent, but we must follow also the advice of our attorney. And so as it relates to the Florida High School, I'm sure every board member will stand available to make sure that our students at Leflore County High School and Leflore County Elementary School are safe at all times.
And I certainly appreciate that, but the parents of Edelmina certainly do not feel that way with their children having to go to school today in areas that may have been unsafe. But again, those are just phone calls that I received because I represent that area.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying, Dr. Bailey. But like I said, this board promotes a safe and orderly school, but this board also has to follow Mississippi Code as it relates to our policies. It's not an option. And once again, we want to work hand in hand with our superintendent to make sure that those kids at Leflore County High School, Leflore County Elementary School, they are safe. So we have to follow our policies.
Any other discussion, board members?
I just want to make a comment because I think we do absolutely put the safety of the staff and the children first. There's no question about that. I concur greatly with what Dr. Moore said is these should not have been emergencies. COVID might be an emergency if somebody tests positive. These should not be emergencies. We do need to be proactive. We had a whole summer, a whole year and a half. That's what we need to be dealing with. We've got to follow policy, but we also, it's not that much of a delay, I don't think, if Dr. Brown contacts the president, and then we could have a virtual meeting. It doesn't take but 3 people to make the vote. This can be done, but I think we need to follow the policy.
Any other discussion?
Dr. Bailey, if you don't mind, could you kind of like recap what Ms. Magna said? Because I couldn't hear what she was saying.
She said that she agreed with Dr.
I guess
Moore.
my mic is not working.
No, she said that she agreed with Dr. Moore, and that she would encourage us to be proactive considering this summer. No one was utilizing the facility, and these are some areas of concern that could have potentially been addressed at that time. And even with following our policy, the board, working with the superintendent, very well could have called an emergency board meeting virtually, since a quorum only requires 3 board members to address this. Is that correct? Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
it is. Thank you, Dr.
Yeah, that's correct. I agree with her as well. And we just came off of a Labor Day long weekend. So, I mean, that we could have utilized that weekend to do all the spring. We could have done Friday after they left, all day Saturday, all day Sunday, all day Monday. So did the bleed just come like this week?
It was just reported this week. So that was the report we received this week. So this just happened. So the maintenance department got on it right then, but it was just reported to us this week.
Was this week the only time?
So Dr. Brown, how many students were bitten or attacked by police today?
I received one phone call from a parent, and I received an email from a teacher. One parent called early this morning, so about 8 o'clock, her child was bitten by a flea or fleas, and I received an email from a teacher who had I guess a flea bite mark on her hand and one of her feet. But as far as the number of students, I just know what was reported to me. I received those 2 phone calls myself. But the parent was concerned for other students as well. I did explain to her the process and the measures that the district had taken. But I did appreciate her for keeping us informed and expressing her concerns, as well as the teacher who submitted pictures via email.
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
And did you or if any of the administration go over there today?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Johnson went back and did walkthroughs today at the school. We also have one of our chiefs on campus as well over there, but Mr. Johnson and his team went over to do walkthroughs.
Okay.
Dr. Bailey?
Ms. Lewis?
Any board members that will be available?
Your connection was bad, Ms. Milton. We heard you say any board members?
Okay. Yeah, I said, are there any board members that could be available to do a walkthrough on tomorrow?
Of course, you name the time.
I can't hear you, Dr. Bailey.
Yes, ma'am.
You will be available?
Yes, ma'am.
Dr. Moore?
I can be available.
I have a prior commitment.
I will not be back. I will not be back in Greenwood until around 1 o'clock.
And what about you, Ms. Abraham?
I have a prior commitment on Friday.
I can't, what is she saying,
She
please? I
has
cannot
a
understand.
prior commitment, therefore she will be unable to join.
Okay, so board members, if Ms. Lewis says she won't be back until like 1, so could we all just go over there about 2 o'clock tomorrow?
I can't make 2. If it were earlier, I can make it. I cannot make 2, no.
Okay, all right, well, what time are you available, Dr. Bailey?
Madam President, if we may, can we work this out with the superintendent to just allow us to move on with the agenda? The
He
time.
said one more time.
Can we work the time out directly with Dr. Brown, which would allow us just to move on with the agenda?
Okay.
Is that
Dr.
fine?
Bailey, I still have a question.
Is that fine with you, Ms. Milton?
Say what, Dr. Bailey?
I say, is it fine with you that we work out the time directly with Dr. Brown to visit the school on tomorrow, which will allow us to continue with the agenda?
I mean, but it don't take but 1 second to say, I'm available anytime, so I'm just waiting on you and Dr. Ford to give me a time, and then we can ask Dr. Brown if that work for her.
And if it doesn't, we'll continue to go back and forth, but I'll go with the will of the board.
10:30.
Okay, Dr. Bailey.
Dr. Moore said 10:30, Ms. Milton.
10:30 is fine with me. Is 10:30 fine with you, Dr. Bailey?
Unfortunately not, but I don't want to interfere.
All right, let's go on with the agenda, Dr. Bailey.
Ms.
I
Lewis?
have a question.
Yes, ma'am, Ms. Lewis.
This question is for Dr. Brown. Are we 100% sure on those individuals who were bitten, that they were bitten by fleas?
I don't think we can say we're 100% sure, but we can say they were bitten on the campus of Leflore County High School. Now, the exterminators determined that there were fleas. So all I can say is they were bitten, but as far as 100% confirming that they were fleas, I cannot.
Okay. All right, because it could have very well been a mosquito.
Any other discussion, board members?
Dr. Brown, I would like to go to, Leflore, High School and Leflore Elementary tomorrow. And, so if you could just give us time that we can work and just meet at the central office and go in the van, if you don't mind.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Chair will entertain a motion for consideration of executive session.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and properly second. All in favor, vote by the sign of aye.
I'm Angela Abraham.
I, Kalanda Moore.
Jackie Lewis.
Samantha Milton.
Rashawn Bailey, motion carries.